Hey folks, Kilt-Man here, Kilt-Man, at your services. So you better circle those wagons, fire when you see the whites of their eyes, but save the last one for yourself. Because out here on the frontier, it's kill or be killed. It's a dog-eat-dog world. And in this film, they do eat dogs as well. Folks, how are you all? Kilt-Man here, Kilt-Man, at your services. And now I'm going to indulge myself, and hopefully you'll enjoy it too. I'm going to discuss a movie which has meant a lot to me since I was a wee little bambino when I first saw it on TV, albeit in a cut down version, and was horrified by its violence and its stark brutality. And also, it was US Cavalry versus Indians. Oh yes, one of my favourite types of movie. And gave me, one of those long-standing obsessions with the North American Plains Wars and the Indian Wars in the South, the whole Civil War thing, and Native American tribalism. And I embrace both cultures. As many of you who've seen many of my videos will know, I've testified a lot to this. We have the facsimile of the Errol Flynn, they bowed the boots on, made the year after the film came out. Buckskin leather jacket with the correct Colonel shoulder boards. We have US Cavalry First Lieutenant tunic there, and we have a member of the 7th Cavalry standing proud. He's a corporal from 1879. 1867 helps to read it first, Kilt-Man. Yeah, the film in question is 1972's Ulzana'S Raid. I know many of you are like going, oh yes, and you're beginning to shudder now because you remember just how galvanizing and like eye-popping and jaw-dropping this movie was when you first encountered it in one of its many different versions. And I have several. I've got about 3 different versions, and rumours and legends have it that there's actually several more versions. It's had cuts, censorship all around the world. And also, it's got 2 differing cuts because although Robert Aldrich of the Dirty Dozen, and Burt Lancaster, who were they'd worked together, they'd done westerns before, and they would do other movies after this. But without a doubt, this is their watershed, this is their zeitgeist, their collaboration works the best here, and yet it was a troubled, conflicted production because to get it off the ground, Robert Aldrich, although successful and a popular filmmaker, had a lot of misses as well as hits, and his westerns with Burt Lancaster were critically drubbed, like Valdez is Coming and Vera Cruz. What's the other one? There's another one. I can't remember now. But they weren't great movies. But his finest hour between the two of them would come. But because he brought in Burt Lancaster as a producer as well, it caused friction. Because Burt Lancaster was he was a very visionary filmmaker in his own right, and really knew his stuff, and was very highly opinionated. So his version, there's a cut of his version which is different than the Robert Aldrich version, which kind of went round the world. And only in certain territories can you get a copy of the Burt Lancaster version, which I believe is slightly shorter. It removes some scenes, but it has some other ones put in. But we'll discuss these in due course. And because I haven't got an Ulzana'S Raid mug, I've got a Zulu Dawn mug though, and Burt Lancaster was in that several years later, 1979. Again, playing a grizzled war veteran going against a savage tribal enemy in their own lands, and coming a cropper, shall we say. So, cheers y'all. So, Ulzana'S Raid, 1972. It's coming out during the revisionist period of westerns, and the westerns, perhaps more than any other genre, really reflects the changing political climate and the sociology of the population at the time. During the early 70s, Americans were rallying totally against their involvement in Vietnam. You'd had the summer of love beforehand, and now you were getting this darker. The flower power people were still making their movements, making their presence felt, and Vietnam soldiers were returning home now, and they were seeing things like the My Lai massacre on the news broadcasts. Oh dear. This got reflected hugely in movies, none more so than westerns. Now you'd had Dustin Hoffman in Little Big Man, which just paints the Indians as completely, basically just, children of the stars and the sun and the moon, flower power again, and totally depicts the American military as absolute bastards. The truth of the matter is vastly, vastly different. You cannot ever paper over the huge cardinal sin of Europeans moving into another race's land and taking over and committing what amounts to genocide. Well, I'm not even going to begin to try to defend that one. I can't. But what I will do, and as I always have done, is being a student of these wars and this conflict, is I understand both sides, and my idea is always the people on the ground doing the fighting, the people who've moved in and settled there and were fighting for their own survival. Everyone's fighting for their survival. The tribes didn't get along with each other by and large, but they could exist together. The Apache in the southwest was driven out of their lands by the Comanche, and the Comanche held proud for quite a while against other tribes, against Mexicans and against Europeans. But they have a hugely bad reputation because they would make war on anybody basically. But their society was one that worked for quite some time, and they held their own. They held their lands. Well, they weren't even their lands. They drove the Apache out of their lands. They see what I mean? It's very complicated, all of this. So the Apaches were driven up. They were put on reservations, and then with Chateau, Nana, Vittorio, these were all real tribal chieftains and warlords who would wage war, make raids against the whites and the settlers and the army, and lead them a merry, goose chase around the territories for years. And a real life warrior chieftain who, with a band of brave warriors, left the San Carlos reservation in 1881. 1881, I think it was somewhere around about that time, and went on a raid. Ulzana was his name. Ulzana'S Raid, the movie, directed by Robert Aldrich, written by Scotsman Alan Sharp, is a fictionalised account of what took place then. And if anything, no matter how brutal and how action-packed this movie is, it's nothing compared to what happened in real life. Because in real life, Ulzana, whose name had a double N in it, Ulzana. This is just Ulzana, really, one N. With only about 12 warriors, wrought havoc. They killed almost 40 people, including soldiers who had set ambushes for them, and Ulzana managed to get out of that and set traps for the pursuing cavalrymen and take them out. They stole horses everywhere, they killed homesteaders, they even attacked other tribal villages and killed women and children in their desire to take horses and go on the rampage again. In the end, Ulzana, depicted differently in this movie, they went into Mexico, and then years later they came back and surrendered. And he, by all accounts, he was a heavy drinker. Ooh. Fitting that cliche of the Indians being, once you gave them whiskey, that was it, you could walk all over them. Yeah, well, here's to you, Ulzana. But I've heard he drank himself to death, but I don't know the facts behind that one. And he died in something like 1901. But in reality as well, the main protagonist, our hero of Ulzana'S Raid is Burt Lancaster's Chief of Indian Scouts, Mackintosh. And he's this grizzled veteran who was enlisted once in the film. They realise that in Fort Lowell that Ulzana has jumped the reservation and with a bunch of braves is now on the warpath. It's a raiding party. What are they going to do? They're going to rape, torture, maim, mutilate and murder all across the frontier for as long as they want to, for as long as they can get away with it. And that is what they would do. That is what the raiding parties were all about. It was recapturing their lost freedom and gaining power and strength from the victims. That's what this film is all about. And there's me going on about like the flower power and like the revisionist sort of westerns depicting the tribal native as a darling of the land. Well, they were vicious guerrilla fighters as well, with a lot of angst and a lot of, you know, European monkeys on their backs, a lot of things to fight back about. But going against them would be grassroots soldiers, the soldiery of all types of class. You'd have officers, you know, from university and from military academies who are going in totally green, which is what Lieutenant De Bruin, who is played by the great Bruce Davison, who only the year before had been in the great rat epic horror movie Willard. Wonderful stuff. And he plays the green, wet behind the ears lieutenant, who's the son of a clergyman, and he follows the good book. He believes, you know, a soldier can still be a good Christian as well. He does not understand the law of the land, the frontier way of life and death, and the fact that Ulzana and his band of warriors will capture their victims and torture them for hours and commit horrible atrocities. He cannot understand it, he cannot reconcile it, and he will go through his own odyssey throughout the quest to bring Ulzana to justice. I know, I'm going right around this thing in a huge sort of overview. We're going to go in depth on the whole, all the elements that make this film work so well and make it so indelible in the minds of people that have seen it. But in reality, Macintosh, played by Burt Lancaster, grizzled, curly hair, lots of stubble on him, wearing battered old, you know, oh God, what do you call them? Oh, fringe buckskin. Good God. See, this is why indigenous people want to discover alcohol. Just lose the lands, because your mind just goes to marbles. But Macintosh himself in the film is based on a real life character. Archie Macintosh was a chief of scouts for the Oregon Cavalry during the same period that the real life Ulzana'S raid took place. And General Crook was being driven out of his mind because he could not capture anybody from Ulzana'S raiding party. And no matter what he did, no matter how many troops he threw into the field, he could not capture him. And Ulzana just kept on. Did about, I don't know, something like 5,000 mile round trip, picking off homesteads here, there and everywhere, and just destroying the cavalry that came after him. Fantastic guerrilla tactics. And Macintosh would be the kind of guy that in reality you would hire, like in the film, to go and track him down and bring him to justice, or rather bring his head, because the US government in reality offered $25 for any head that was brought back from Ulzana'S raiding party. That's quite a lot of money really when you think about it, and quite grisly, you know, but that was what the kind of thing they were after. And Macintosh was the son of a Scottish Canadian father and a Chippewa Indian mother. He served with the Oregon Cavalry with distinction. His battle honours are great. He was recognised. General Crook recognised his talents and made him like chief of scouts, and would bring him into other expeditions to bring in other, you know, escapees from reservations. But not in reality, Ulzana. He did not serve on that campaign. But Burt Lancaster's character is entirely based around this guy who had an Indian wife, an Apache wife, who you do see in the movie only at the very start when they leave the fort to go out on the campaign to go and bring Ulzana back. Will you see Amy Eccles playing this Apache wife? You'll see her at the window and you'll see her waving farewell to him as the cavalry patrol goes out. Most of them doomed, and well, including Macintosh. Now, in reality, Macintosh, his brother, his real life brother Douglas, served with Custer and died in the battle of the Little Bighorn. So Indian fighting was in their blood, and Macintosh in this movie has a fantastic comrade in arms, a brother, a blood brother, an Apache warrior called Kinete, played by George Luke, who's a Mexican actor. A lot of the Indians you see in this movie are played by Mexican actors, but they have the look. What's his name? Joaquin Martinez, I think it is. Let me just check that. I got that wrong. Yeah, Joaquin Martinez plays Ulzana, and if you look at pictures of Ulzana and Vittorio, the real life Indian raiders, Apaches, Joaquin Martinez has a look, the definite look of these guys. And George Luke, who plays Kinete, who is Burt Lancaster's Macintosh, that's his comrade, an expert Apache scout, but he signed the dotted line. He signed to follow orders from the US government, but he's still totally invested in Apache ways and traditions. And when asked by Bruce Davison's Green Lieutenant, "Do you know Ulzana?" and he says, like, "Well, my wife is his wife's sister." And Bruce Davison's like, "They're sisters? So you're like connected?" "Yeah, but his wife, very ugly. My wife, not ugly." And he kind of grins. Throughout the movie, you will encounter murderous atrocities being committed by Ulzana's band. And De Bruin, the young lieutenant, is trying to, why'd you do this? They keep finding the bodies of people who've been burnt and mutilated and tortured for hours. Why do you do this? Why? And he picks on Kinete because Kinete is working with them, and he keeps asking him, Kinete, after like the lights out kind of thing, and the picket sentries are up there, and they're bedding down for the night. Campfires are going. The great coats are on. It gets cold in the desert at night, And he'll say, like, Kinete, can I just have a word with you? And Kinete's kind of like, oh, here we go again, like. And George Luke plays him brilliantly, very stoic, but with his broken command of English, it comes across really well, and he looks the part as well. He's a good-looking fella, and I remember watching this film as a kid, and oh my God, cavalrymen, against Indians. I wanted to be Kinete. It's like, in Greece, you don't want to be Danny Zuko, you want to be Kaniki. He is the second to the main guy, but he's better, he's cooler, he's sexier. I wanted to be Kinete, because it's Kinete's story. We'll come on to all this. But De Bruin keeps asking him, why do you people do it? Can you torture a man like that? Yes, I can. Why? Why do that? Why? Because you get power. The longer, he said, look at the fire. The longer the fire burns, the more people it can warm, the more heat you get from it. In other words, the longer you torture someone, the longer they survive, the more power you're getting from them. All of this is genuinely true for Native Americans, and it's a very this film depicts a lot of their beliefs about death and mutilation, and their death rituals, their murderous and torturous ways. There's reasons for it, spiritual reasons for it. And the film, Alan Sharp, again a Scotsman, but he was well read, he studied the American Indian Wars, so he knew his stuff inside out, better than many American writers on the same topic. And the film does depict this in a very sparse, economical, yet brilliantly pulverising and to the point, authentic dialogue that's in this movie. So, why'd you do it? To get power. The power from that man comes into you. You get power. We need power. It's basically the desert. There's nothing out here. We need power. Why is Ulzana doing this then? Ulzana spent years on the reservation. Kinete doesn't put it across quite as eloquently as I'm going to do it, because he has this brilliantly authentic broken English patois, and basically he's explaining that Ulzana's a warrior, but he's been kept with dogs and women and old men and children. The smell in his nose is of all of that. He wants the smell of fast riding ponies, of bullets, of fire, of terror, of violence, of adventure. So that's why he's gone out on the raid. That's what he's doing. He's gaining, we'd say regaining their youth and their vitality. But to the Indian, It's something different. It's a spiritual thing as well. It's like gaining the power from all around and having power and dominion over all of this. In killing and mutilating and torturing a victim, it isn't just poking fun at them. It's also showing some respect to them. It's a very strange concept, I know. People are going to go, oh, what? No. Bizarrely, it is. It would differ in different tribes. Some would pour scorn on it. Suicide is depicted in this movie as well. There's the great sequence of when they realise that Ulzana has gone out, escaped with other warriors, they send out just two. One of them is a raw recruit, cavalryman, to go and warn all the homesteaders. And, look, get your asses into the fort. A very bedraggled, unfortified fort. It's an open plan fort with no walls on it. That is genuine. That's how a lot of forts in the southwest were. And there's many images of the cavalry at rest, sitting on the rocks and just taking water. I've got lots of photos from the cavalry units that in service out in the southwest, fighting the Apache wars. And that perfectly encapsulates what you see. And the nighttime, the encampments then, I've got images from all of this. So the film is patently authentic and faithful. But they send out two guys to go and warn the homesteaders, you better come in, Ulzana'S on the warpath. Well, can't you take us in? Where's the rest of the escort? My orders aren't to do that. My orders are just to warn you to get in as quick as you can. And it's a terrifying prospect. And of course, one of the guys, these outriders, gets caught right at the start of the movie by Ulzana and his men, and gets dragged off to be tortured. You don't see any of that, but you're going to see him get dragged off and tortured. Well, he does get dragged off and tortured, obviously. But the point is that when the guy who explains to some other families, look, I can't come in with you, he does go in with the wife and son of Ruxaya, Carl Swenson, I think it is, who plays a Dutch, maybe German immigrant there. But he said, I'm staying behind. This is one of the famous scenes in the movie. I'm staying behind, with his dog, his faithful dog. And you just know this can't end well. No, this is good farmland here. And the tearful farewell with his wife, and he's trying to be stoic and that, like, I see you soon. While you're gone, I fixed that door that makes you care so much. And she goes, you look to yourself, Willie. No innuendo there. You look to yourself, and I see you soon. But in their eyes, you can see quite clearly they know. And it's as a kid, you think, oh Jesus, it hits you right away. So off they go. But what happens is this guy Horowitz is the soldier who refused other people, but he brings these in and he's riding with them, and they get ambushed. Ulzana'S men just take out one of the horses. And the soldier realises, oh shit, look, I'm surrounded, nothing I can do. So he rides, but the woman screams, soldier, don't leave me. So in a great moment, he turns, he wheels the horse about and comes back, and she's going like, thank you. But he knows he can't save her. Riding full pelt, bang, hits her between the eyes, saving her from a fate worse than death. Picks up the lad, come on, ride with me, come on, and off they go. And Ulzana himself shoots the horse, brings them down. The cavalryman just realises, shit, bang, blows his own brains out. Blood actually hits the camera as well, the lens. And you're like, oh my god. And on the TV versions in the UK, we don't allow horse falls, horse trips. So a lot of the action scenes in this movie are rendered incomprehensible because, like Conan the Barbarian, the horse trips are removed. It just completely destroys any logic to what you see in the action afterwards. You're like, what the hell happened there? In the full uncut version, the horses are brought down. It's a terrible move and it's outlawed now, but in those movies, most of those horses do get up again. In the film, you see them get up again. But they kill they bring the horse down, and then he shoots himself to save himself from being tortured. And the Indians come up and they pour scorn on him. One just shakes his head like that. He spits on the body. And then in scorn, they bring out their knives, the buck knives, and they hack his body up and pull his heart out and start chucking it around like past the parcel, and they're laughing their heads off. Now, I'm going to say something about this. Suicide, when encountered by Indians, it differed from tribe to tribe. It's all well and good, people saying that it cuts at last stand, many of the bluecoats shot themselves. Undoubtedly, a few of them may well have done. I've discussed this before, it's now been proven they fought hand to hand like absolute bastards. They fought back with an absolute will to survive and live and take as many of the Indians with them as they could. And the Indians bravely fought against them, you know, with knives and tomahawks and hatchets. And they fought literally hand to hand. But there were bodies which had clearly shot themselves. They've worked all this out, and there's a lot of the bodies have been, you know, completely analysed as to the wounds. It's very highly described. You know, you know where to look. You'll see it all. And in some cases, the bodies that were most badly mutilated were the men that fought the best back and didn't kill themselves. They fought bravely. So the reason why they were hacked to bits and so badly mutilated is because the Indians believed that, you know, the man you killed may well be waiting for you in the spirit world. So you don't, if he fought so well while he was alive, you don't want to face him again. So you're going to tear him to bits, so he's no threat to you in the spirit world. And yet sometimes in this film they hack apart the body of a man who commits suicide. Well, a lot of times when a man commits suicide against the Indians, they feed him all the more and they wouldn't touch his body. So the body would be found with like what maybe an arrow in it, but he realised he was wounded and he weren't going to be able to survive, and then he shot himself. So one wound and then the bullet wound that killed him, and the body's unmolested. Because the Indians were afraid, some believed that if you took your own life, that was even greater medicine than if you fought to the last second, the last breath. To have the power to take your own life. And yet other tribes thought massively differently and would pour scorn upon someone that would not fight to the end. But in this movie, the way it's depicted, you don't want to fall into these guys' hands. They will burn you, cut your genitals off. Poor Ruxaya, the one who's... They don't kill his son. The soldier commits suicide, is hacked up. The woman's been shot between the eyes. So they don't want her body, they don't want that at all. But the lad, he was like 13 years old, and in a bit of a bad mood, they speak very heavy accents, and he's a G-part. You're like, well, where'd you get that accent from? You're living with your mum and dad who were like German Dutch immigrants. Where did you get the big, you know, G-part apple pie accent from? But, you know, there's only a couple of mistakes in the movie, really. A couple of bits where you think, I'd have changed that. But they begin to try to rob the wagon, and there's a ring on his mother's finger, and the Indian can't get it off the finger. He's about to get his knife or bite it and chop the finger off. So the lad comes over and he pushes the Indian away, and you know, he loosens the ring and then gives it to him, and they leave him. Lieutenant De Bruin and McIntosh and Kinete and their patrol find the remnants of this attack, this raid, and the body of their cavalryman is being hacked up, like, and they're all angry about that. But they send the wagon back with the lad. But Bruce Davison says to McIntosh, why didn't they kill the boy? Why did they spare him? And Burt Lancaster's McIntosh replies, spare him what? And a lot of critics have read into this, like, look, he's just witnessed his mum dying, he's witnessed a man committing suicide and then being hacked up, you know, and he's fought back, he's traumatised, and never... I don't really see it that way. It's a nice line, spared him what? Frontier life was hard, and these realities were known. You drum into your kids, you know, like, look, if we come under attack and you get a chance to get out, run, just keep running. And, you know, and save last bullet for yourself, all that sort of thing. Don't fall into their hands. And they say, like, They're implying that Ulzana and his men leave the kid because they give him something worse now. He's got to live with what he's seen. I'd argue with that. The point is made by Kinete later on. Look, there's no power because Bruce Davison's lieutenant, again, in another interrogation with Kinete, trying to learn the ways. Why didn't they kill the boy? He said, well, no power from a boy. Power from man. So kill a grown man, don't kill a child. There's nothing to be gained from that. But the critics always seem to say that, oh, no, they left him to a fate worse than death because, he's got to live with the memories. As if, like, Ulzana's plan was to do... No, Ulzana's not bothered about that. It basically is, look, he's a kid. We're going to gain nothing from, torturing him. Plus, there's a moral code too. Ulzana's son is riding with this raiding party. So, he understands that kind of thing as well. But they do ride off, and the son's there cradling his mother's body. And they all ride off and just, like, sort of dispassionately observe him. And the one he pushed over kind of looks at him as well. And in an interesting note as well, I'm drinking whiskey and I'm drinking tea as well. The tea's going cold, the whiskey already is cold, even though it's fire water. So I might stop drinking this. There. The whiskey will take over. As if you didn't know that was going to happen anyway. Once again, folks, I apologise for the rambling nature of this. People ask me, can you review... We know what your favourite films are, but you still haven't reviewed this, this and this. It's because it takes a lot for me to sit down and talk about films which I've written about previously. Spent maybe many evenings writing a big, massive essay on these movies, where every word has been prepared and thought over. When I sit down to talk about it, I already think, well, I've covered this, and I poured my heart and soul into that review. To do it now, on camera, and not read it out, it's harder to do. So I just go off on little tangents and tributaries, and I loop back, which is kind of the Apache tactics employed in the movie as well. So let's resume in a second. This file is about to end, and then we'll resume into another file on this. The data on your the memory on your device of choice. Tea and whiskey. I am, of course, playing Frank DeVol's awesome, jarring, and yet quite heavily cliched in some places, but brilliant score to Ulzana'S Raid. And this is the full score, released by Entrada. So, where was I up to? They leave the kid. Kinete explains repeatedly to Lieutenant Bruce Davison's De Bruin that, why we do what we do, and I can do it too. There's reasons for why we torture somebody. Get over it. And the file changed over. So yeah, we're still here, folks. Still here. Come on. We're still pursuing Ulzana. And, but De Bruin will ask Macintosh as well, do you hate the Apache? And Macintosh is like, well, to hate the Apache is like hating the desert because there's no water in it. What's the point? I get by being plenty scared of them. That works enough for me. Now, again, at this point, I want to say that the film was massively touted as being anti-Apache and very pro-military. Watch the film properly. When the Indians finally suffer a victim, because what they do, one of their tactics is, they know they're being pursued by a cavalry unit. They know that Macintosh and Kinete are there, who are really good scouts. So their tactics are, right, in a great moment, they have a couple of the Apaches, they tie the horses together and in single file lead out, but all the other Apaches have got off the horses onto rocks and they're going to loop back. So the cavalry are going to follow the horse trail. But the cavalry realise that, well, Macintosh and Kinete realise what's happening because the horses are travelling light. They can tell by the prints and the depth of the prints. Right, so what he's doing, he's going to loop back behind us, but what's he going to do? He's going to loop back to the left or to the right. That's the choice we've got to make, because either way, by the way, Lieutenant, where does he want to fight me? He doesn't want to fight you, Lieutenant. He wants to kill you. Apaches and Indians don't want to fight. They don't want an open skirmish because they're not going to win. They won't win that. It's hit and run tactics, guerrilla tactics. Hit, run, and scatter. And the cavalry can never find you. Be it on the plains, in the mountains, in the forests, or out in the deserts, on the buttes and the canyons and the ravines. Split up, scatter. You're never going to find them. Custer learned that, which is why he didn't want to allow Indians to ever scatter when he was going up against them. Got to take them now. Of course, it proved his massive undoing. But we know that. So McIntosh and Kinete realised that, right, I'm going to take out I'm going to go after the ones who are leading the horses away from us, and I'm going to take them down. And then you guys stay behind and wait for him to come back. So you've got tactics and counter tactics, all this strategy. It's great. And it's worked out in such a brilliant, on the hoof sort of fashion. And you can see like the poor young lieutenant's like, no, I'm in charge. He's been told it's his mission, it's his campaign, but you'd be well to listen to what McIntosh says. But in terms of military decisions, you're the one in charge. But he's getting countermanded and undermined at every turn. Of course, he's green. In the full uncut version, in the Burt Lancaster version, I should say, which is not the full uncut because there's differences between two. There's an early sequence where a seasoned captain, played by, what's his name? I forgot the guy's name. Lloyd Bochner, I think his name is. He doesn't want to go out after Ulzana. He's quite clearly afraid and a coward. In that version, you see him weaseling out of the mission, so that the guy in charge of the fort reluctantly enlists the young lieutenant to do it, but then sings his praises. And of course, Bochner then says to him, by the way, I campaigned to get you this gig. It's me that said you can do this. So he's all made up. It's because this guy's a fucking coward, really. Now, in the version which most of you will see and be aware of, which is the full Aldrich version, you don't see that sequence, but you he's a snivelling little wretch. The way he tries to pour scorn on McIntosh at the start, when McIntosh is like saying, look, he's only out there to rape, torture, murder and mutilate. That's what he's out there for. You can take that, you can put money on that. He'll want horses and he'll kill wherever he finds them, and that's it. And the raid will only end when he wants it to end. So we've got to go and get him. Simple as that. They don't listen to him. He's a bigot and he's undisciplined and all that. Like, this guy is just a coward. So listen to what McIntosh says. But this poor lieutenant, this is his coming of age. He's actually out in the field for the first time, and he's encountering butchered bodies, and he feels powerless. I think speed is what we need to do. We should be going after them. Doesn't matter. Apache will ride his horse until it collapses. Then he'll put a fire in its belly and ride it some more. Then when it finally dies, he'll eat a bit, steal another horse. What are you going to do with your troop of horses? Cavalry don't want to lose the horses. A cavalryman is useless without his horse. Without his horse, he's an infantryman. And there's another great line as well, like, so you're saying that we're calling Vittorio, that Ulzana is on foot. This is this decoy thing where they've got off the horses and let his son and another brave lead the horses off to draw the cavalry further out in the wrong direction while they can wheel back and take them out, or just go behind them and go and cause more mayhem behind them and let them just go on forever in the wrong direction. And the lieutenant says to him, like, so you're saying that Ulzana'S men are on foot? Well, that's a mighty fine description of men without horses, lieutenant. Yeah. And but McIntosh goes out after them, and in a great sequence, he rides up on his own. He's got his Winchester, and these two, one's falling asleep at the back like that, and the one at the front realises, it's like, it's coming after us. So they begin to, run off and like charge away. McIntosh, they take the horse out from under McIntosh, and one of those horse falls again in the cut down British initial version, which may well still be the version that's out there on DVD, which I've got. But I've got the Italian and the German Blu-rays of this movie, and it's the same, but uncut versions. All the horse falls are in, so the scenes make sense. And the stuntman does an amazing, forward dive off the horse, onto the deck. Burt Lancaster, who's played an Apache and a Navajo in movies as well himself. And Burt Lancaster played, that was the film I couldn't think of that Robert Aldrich did, called Apache, with Burt Lancaster playing a blue-eyed Apache. No. That was way earlier than this. It's not good. But behind his dead horse, and the Indians are coming at him, the two Indians are coming at him. Bang! Bang, bang! Takes them out. But he only wounds one of them. And what he's done, he's killed Ulzana'S son. Kinete and McIntosh know this. So the lieutenant's like, how come you two know more than I do? Because we live here. We know them. Listen to what I tell you. Don't be quoting the manual. It doesn't mean jack shit out here. We know what we're going up against. So, but one of the Indians that survived him goes off. So the great sergeant, played by Richard Jekyll. I've discussed him so many times on the channel. I love Richard Jekyll. A veteran of many westerns, many horror movies, many sci-fi movies. He's awesome playing the grizzled sergeant who actually says, I went out after Nana in 81, and which is one of the real life raids and the real life warlords who jumped reservation. So they actually name drop some of these other things as well. I went out after him, it was a bad one. That if you've ever had to pull a screaming infant out of a cactus tree, and then wait for hours while it dies before you can bury it, then you get back to me about fighting Apaches, Lieutenant. Well, he and another guy go out to track down the Apache that's got away, who's badly wounded. They follow the blood trail, and then finally he comes back, and they say, well, what's your report, Lieutenant? Only one's come back, and his mate Trooper Miller, is over the back of a horse dead. You killed him. Well, write your full report, Sergeant. There ain't nothing more to write, unless you want to hear about how Miller felt about dying. And what happened to the Indian then? He's dead. That's all there is to it. In the full Burt Lancaster, the Burt Lancaster version. Sorry if I keep saying full Burt Lancaster version. It's not the full version. It's a different version. But you do see those two riding out, Richard Jekyll and Miller getting shot off his horse. You do see that moment. But the rest of it plays out the same. So it's just alternate cuts, and also the bit where Burt Lancaster gets shot off the horse and takes out, shoots the two Apaches coming for him. The finale of that scene's also a little bit different, where the cavalry come up to him and he's sitting there by his dead horse. And again, you've got this whole thing of De Bruin learning about Apache customs, and his whole hatred, his idealism is getting worn away, and it's changing all the time. He has this forever quandary about burying bodies. Bury the bodies, or don't bury the bodies. He gets angry, don't bury them, leave them where they are. And they're like, well, fucking hell, what do you want to do? Because when they encounter Horowitz's body, the suicide cavalryman who's been hacked up, and the rest of the troopers are really, really angry. So when they've got a body now, a dead body, and it's Ulzana'S son, when no one's looking, cut him up, and they start digging into. But De Bruin sees this. What are you doing? Stop that now! Bury this man! And this forms a crux of a conversation with Burt Lancaster's McIntosh. He says, Lieutenant, you just don't like to think that white men can act the same as Apaches. That's what's angered you. This becomes a huge thing, and I would say it's a bit of a fault of Alan Sharp's otherwise fantastic script, which is very on the nose and very sparse and economical and faithful and authentic sounding. Because it's only a couple of days that they're out on the trail, and this lieutenant's going up and down, up and down, up and down throughout the entire time. So that in the end, he goes to bury the bodies. Don't harm an Indian's body, and it's for the wrong reasons, because you're acting like them. And now bury the body. Like, what the fucking hell? What do we do? You say one thing, then you do another. Oh God! And then he encountered the Reardon farmstead. And Mr. Reardon is hung upside down over the ranch fence, upside down, strung to the fence. His head's been burned, his hands have been burned, but his wife, Mrs. Reardon, is still alive, having been raped half to death in the back of a wagon. And then she forms the crux of how they're going to fight back against Ulzana in the final phase of this movie. And this is horrific stuff as well. Like, she's been raped almost to the point of death, and McIntosh says, like, you know, look, that's why she's alive, because they know we're going to have to split command and send her back and look after her. So that's what he wants. He wants us to go after him, but with only half the command left. So he can take us out, then he can take them out again, but he's going to get our horses. At this stage, he primarily wants more horses. They've already encountered a horse that's been killed by one of the Ulzana'S men and left to bleed out as a grim sort of warning sign. They could have hidden the body, but they didn't. They left it there because they're now basically saying, look, we want you. We're not going to flee and escape because we're now running out of horses and we want horses. So we are going to come back for you. We're going to take you guys out. And we know you can't last without your horses, whereas we can still live off the land and run and fight and escape, but we want horses. So, you know, it's like a grim sort of calling card. But at this Reardon's homestead, so where do we bury the bodies? This poor guy's strung up upside down, like burnt, and he just goes, no, leave them as they are. You're like, Lieutenant, not making any sense. And that's the thing. I think it gets a little bit too up and down with his coming to terms with what frontier life is like. I think it would take longer than this particular mission, and you're either going to be burying these bodies or you're not. Of course, when it comes to the end of the movie and they've got cavalrymen and Indians littered all over the place, what do we do with the bodies, sir? Bury them. Bury all of them. You know, and yeah, I know it's a nice poetic sort of payoff to the movie and his character's arc and trajectory, but it just seems a little bit too OTT with the whole thing. Every other scene is discussing burying bodies. And Kinete, a word please. Now, I want to ask you something. After McIntosh's horse has been killed during that skirmish with the two Indians leading these horses, leading them on a merry goose chase, the lieutenant says, take the Indians' horse, take the Apache's horse. And because he's in command, and like McIntosh realises, well, okay, right. He goes over to Kinete, his blood brother, and says to him, I've got your horse. Kinete just looks at him, and McIntosh gives him his Winchester rifle. There, you take that. No other words are said. In other words, look, I've been ordered to take your horse. You know you're better on foot than I am. I'm an older man, but I'm giving you my Winchester. That's what that camaraderie, that relationship is all about. It hinges on the mutual respect. I've got to take this, and you know this as well. So when they ride off again to resume the pursuit of Ulzana now, again, who's now lost 2 men, and the horses have been scattered, but he will regain, well, he needs the horses, so he needs to have the horses back, but they've scattered the horses now anyway, and Kinete just holds on to the saddle, McIntosh rides, and Kinete runs beside him. Again, I've got to come on to Kinete and his trajectory with this movie, because it's the essential backbone of this movie. McIntosh is great, Richard Jekyll's Sarge is great, Bruce Davison's De Bruin is great, Ulzana is great, and his warrior band are terrific. But it's the Kinete story which really, really works and holds so much resonance. I'm going to run out of time again, so I'm going to resume this in a flash. So, folks, I'll be back with a prairie dog's howl. Yeah, we're back. So, I mean, with you sitting watching this, like, there's been no break at all. For me, I've had to upload those 2 first files and then start all over again. So I'm kind of like, where was I up to? Well, I honestly don't know. Well, we're still pursuing Ulzana across the territory. This is all filmed, by the way, in Nogales, Arizona, and in Nevada as well. So they're very authentic locations as well. So, but yeah, so Ulzana'S son's been killed, and they now realise, look, they're on foot, so we're going to have to, but they're circling back. We're going to have to try and find a way of dealing with them. They've got Mrs. Reardon, who survived multiple rapes, and she's battered and bruised, and she tries to commit suicide as well. She goes in during one nighttime sojourn. She goes into a little lake bed and begins, gotta wash it off, and it's horrible scene. And they're kind of like, all the soldiers are sitting back and like, just leave her. They don't want to get in. They all obviously feel for it, and then next thing you hear her scream. She goes into she tries to drown herself, and De Bruin goes in and rescues her. Mrs. Reed, and they bring her back out. And like, the recent film Hostiles with Christian Bale and Wes Studi, of course, Magua from Last of the Mohicans, and also played Geronimo in the Walter Hill's movie Geronimo. Awesome. It brings back a lot of memories, all that kind of thing as well. Hostiles is very much like a revisit to this sort of material, and also in a very realistic and emotional and sort of non-judgmental sort of stance, which what this film is also about. Anyway, I'm leaping ahead again, but you know me, I'll rein myself back in. We're doomed, aren't we, with this one? That piece of music there, that's Frank DeVol's fantastic bit of music for Burt Lancaster's Macintosh, chasing after the two guys leading these horses. A massive galloping chase. It's Burt Lancaster riding that horse. Burt Lancaster was an athlete. We know how athletic and powerful and strong and agile, and his stamina and endurance were beyond reproach. Did a lot of his own stunts. Also appeared in many movies with the little diminutive guy, his bezzy mate Nick Cravat, the Crimson Pirate. Nick Cravat is in this movie. He plays one of the troopers. And no, I haven't worked out which one he is yet. And I have looked. Also, you've got Robert Foxworth as well, from Prophecy, from Damien Omen 2, and from Falcon's Crest. Or was it Dynasty? One of them bloody things. But Robert Foxworth is also in this as a trooper. Just trooper. That's all they are. But Nick Cravat is there. And Nick Cravat's a little guy, little curly-headed, bushy moustache, curly. But like Burt Lancaster, he's going to be a lot older in this. And I've looked at it, and I bet he's that obvious, and I can't place him at all. I just can't. Someone up there will go, look, in scene, look at 93 minutes and 43 seconds. There he is, grinning in the background on a high trapeze going between two canyon buttes. Buttes, I should say. So, yeah, they've got Mrs. Reardon now, and they're looking after. They put her in a cavalry tunic and a cavalry hat as well, and she's all battered and bruised. And she's a very attractive woman, but they really have made her look like she's been through hell. And this is something I like about this movie as well, is that despite all the depredations that you've seen Ulzana'S group committing, the murder, the mutilation, the torture, and you've seen a lot of it, you know what they're capable of. When you look at all these warriors he's got, none of them look nasty. None. They're very young. They're all just juveniles, and they don't look sinister or horrible. And it's hard to imagine them committing a mass gangbang rape. It's hard to imagine them doing it. But in reality, they weren't brutes or monsters. They did what they did out of ritual and custom, and spiritual reasons. They didn't look like monsters. Obviously, Wes Studi as Magua in Last of the Mohicans, Michael Mann's epic masterpiece, does look demonic and hellish. But again, he's portrayed by a real-life Native American who has a vested interest in doing it right, but telling the character as he would be in reality. So he's not. He might look. When he does, you're like, oh God, it's Magua, and he is one of the arch villains of westerns and Hollywood historical epics. But he's not a brute, he's not horrific. And then you've got, I always forget this guy's name, he's also in Last of the Mohicans. He plays Daniel Day-Lewis's, well, blood brother, Uncas, who dies. And the father, Chingachgook, played by Russell Means, a Native American activist. And also, the one who plays Uncas, whose name I have forgotten, and I apologise, is a very volatile Native American activist. He's in the film The Missing. Oh God, Kate Blanchett and Tommy Lee Jones, and that was a modern day horrific one. And he genuinely plays a bogeyman, a Native American bogeyman, a witch doctor, a medicine man who's kidnapping women to sell as slaves, but he commits absolute atrocities, and he's the stuff of nightmare. Now, these guys are not like that. These guys are a very believable bunch who do what they do. They're following Ulzana, who's giving him a new lease of life, and obviously there's a family connection there as well. But he loses his son. So when you imagine them sitting around burning a man's genitals off, burning his feet, scalping him, and cutting his face and his belly open, putting his dog's tail into his mouth, this is what they do to poor Rucksire. I'll come on to that sequence. It's another nightmarish sequence which burns itself into your brain, and especially when you watch it the first time, you just did not expect what happens. But so this bunch, they don't look like evil bastards. They just look like they're just normal people, just Native Americans. They're just Apaches. A lot of them are played by Mexicans, Mexican Indians, so they do look the part. There's an authenticity there, as I say, and but you think these guys did that, and it kind of adds another flavour of realism. Look, they just are. They're just existing. They're doing what they do, and this is the point of the movie. The Apaches are doing what they do. The cavalrymen are doing what they do, and then out of rage and bigotry and hatred, and also fear. Oh, we've got one of their bodies now. Let's cut it up. So you've got this dichotomy, this bipolar approach to life on the frontier. Respect, but fear. Hatred, yeah, it's just savagery, but it's what we do. It's the way of life and death out here. And it's not done out of malice either. It's done out of spiritual reasons. Rage on behalf of the cavalrymen. But the Indians do it out of some kind of spiritual belief. So, who's wrong? It's both sides are horrific and horribly, abhorrent. But, this is what the film does. This is the film that conjures up so many vivid graphic imagery. Although a lot of the violence you see depicted is after the event. Poor Rucksire, when they go to his camp and his homestead, his wife's already been shot by a cavalryman. His son has been consigned to a life of horrible memories, and then they go into the shack and they're like, "You see him?" No. And then Kinete goes behind this tree and just goes, "Macintosh." And then they all come round, and in a real moment of horrific revelation, you see he's been captured, tied to the base of this tree. His feet have been burnt off, his genitals have been burnt off, his belly's been slashed open, and the dog's tail, his trusted dog, who's quilled by 3 arrows, the tail is hanging out. The Indians have not fed him his dog. The Indians ate the dog further down the trail because they find the remains of that and the skull. And as Macintosh says, "Have you ever tasted dog, Lieutenant?" "No, I can't say I have." Tastes quite good if you get him young enough. But it's you're like, oh God. And a lot of horses get shot in this because the whole thing hinges on horses. So kill the bloody horses, because if you allow Ulzana to get horses, the longer his raid will go on. So you've got to kill the horses. And as I said before, cavalrymen killing their horses is not going to be a good thing. That's the last thing they're ever going to do. Well, the last thing they're going to do is that. But so Mrs. Reardon and this dilemma, what do we do? Right, look, Ulzana wants our horses, He knows we're going to split the patrol up to escort Mrs. Reardon back to Fort Lowell. So he's waiting for us to pick us both sides off. What are we going to do? There's a canyon there, right? We can, with Mrs. Reardon, we'll have a smaller contingent, the escort going back. We're going to be the bait. Just don't tell Mrs. Reardon that. You know, it's already been through this once. You know, you guys ride off and let Ulzana'S up in those mountains right now watching. Let him see you go off, but don't make it too obvious that we're setting a trap. You go off and ride off and wait for the signal to come back. Well, what's that signal going to be? Listen, you've got Ulzana up there and you've got a spotter up there. Kinete's going to flush out the spotter. And he's going to, and Kinete goes, well, I'll give you the signal. Well, what's that going to be? He goes, give me your glasses, the binoculars. And he goes, when you see this, you know, meaning when the sunlight hits that, watch for that. That's going to be a signal for you to come back, because obviously Ulzana'S bitten the bait and gone after Macintosh and the smaller patrol with Richard Jekyll. Jekyll! I love the guy, love him. He's gone after him. So when I do this, I've got their spotter, and you come back and we've got him. We can trap him. He won't get the horses, he won't get our guys, and we've got him. Sound simple? Ah, shit, yeah. Well, anyway, what happens is, and it's a fabulous finale and a great action sequence, and you've built up to this. There's been action, there's been killings, there's been gore aplenty, but this is the big, visceral, go for broke finale, and it's done superbly well. Aldrich, who's not the best director, but this, as I said before, Dirty Dozen's great, but it's very indulgent. This is stripped down, and maybe with Burt Lancaster's sort of involvement in it, and overseeing as well, and sort of whispered words in the ear, you know, like, look, no, I do it this way. That's why it all works. So Kinete goes after the spotter, and the spotter's got binoculars. They've got a bugle, they've got binoculars, because they took off other cavalrymen, clearly. And so what happens is, De Bruin leads his men out quite some way away, and all of a sudden, Burt Lancaster, they look at this foreboding canyon, which Ulzana is waiting in, and they're going to write, okay, let's go. Off they go. They ride through. They know what's going to happen. They're going to be attacked there. And they are. But what happens is, Kinete's got to take out the spotter before he can alert Ulzana that the others are coming back. So, but the guy's got binoculars, and he does this and jiggles it in the sunlight, and De Bruin sees that. Right, that's our signal. Let's go, boys. So they begin to ride back to the canyon. They're still some way away, and Kinete's like, shit. Or whatever the Apache word for shit is. You know, like, oh, so right, he's got to go and get this guy. And you get this wonderful, and the music's playing right now. Devo's wonderful cat and mouse hunt and seek game in the mountains. This Ulzana'S man's running about, scurrying about. He knows he's being pursued, and Kinete's going after him. In fact, hang on, that wasn't the bit. Let's get on to the bit. Hide and seek. There you go. Because what this builds up to is the big battle, and Kinete puts his Winchester down, puts his binoculars down, and just goes stealth, like Johnny Rambo going after him. And Birak's fantastic photography. Birak fucks up a couple of times, like, because he has the shot through binoculars. You know, the cliched shot through binoculars. It's like that, the sort of figure eight, the shadow around it. But because it's a camera shot as well with this sort of effect put in there, they zoom in, and like, you know, well, I know those binoculars weren't going to zoom in that fucking far, so it's like, oh, and it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. In otherwise terrific location photography and action photography, following the horses, following the action, great ensemble bits of people tumbling off horses and battles raging. It's very well done, apart from these little zoom shots, like, and you don't need. Kinete pursues him, and around this greatly photographed, he manages to capture him around the base of one of these buttes, and comes up, guts him like that. It's a bit of a disappointing kill actually, because you want to see a bit of blood on this one, and you don't really see it. But the payoff is Kinete just stands there above the body and wipes the blade down dispassionately. He's one of these, he's an Apache, but he's sworn to take these guys down. So he will do. I signed the paper. He's working for the government, but he's still an Apache, so he understands what these guys are doing, but he's still going to do his job. And now it's become I want to take these guys down. They've challenged me, now I'm challenging them. This is the pursuit, hide and seek music. Beautiful. And that cuts to McIntosh and his men, like, let's kick on, let's go through the canyon. And then of course, bang! They're deliberately wounding the troopers, so it slows them down. They got to try and help each other. It just gives them, and it takes a trooper off a horse, and the horses bolt, and they've got a tripwire. They need to set up a tripwire across the end of the canyon, so all the horses, Ulzana'S, they're going like 2 horses, a lot of hand signals. Capture them. Horses come running down, tumble over this thing. Again, in the UK prints, always cut out. Terrible. And the Indians are waiting to catch the horses, and they corral a whole load of pilfered horses. So they're getting the horses back that they want. This battle gets worse and worse, quite clearly. Kinete's took out the spotter. De Bruin's coming back, but he's not going to get there in time, really. These men are getting picked off left, right, and centre. They're wounded, but they're fighting on. Richard Jekyll manages to grab a Richard Dreyfuss lookalike, who might be Robert Foxworth. I don't know. No, I don't know. Sarge, I'm hurt bad. I'm hurt real bad. He grabs him, and the two of them get into the rocks, and a bullet ricochets. They settle down. A bullet goes ka-ching, and Richard Jekyll turns around, and the guy he just saved has just bought it, and blood dribbles out of his mouth. It's like that. In the meantime, the guy on the wagon with Mrs. Reardon, who's completely deranged by this stage, he's been shot. Oh, crumbles off the seat, and you hear, and it's kind of tacky because it's clearly looped over. The voice has been added on afterwards, and it's Richard Jekyll shouting, "Get the wagon! Get the wagon! Run it into them rocks!" And in a brilliant moment, with one of the most heroic bits of music that Frank DeVol comes up for this, let's get it. This is the battle. This is that patrol in the canyon getting picked off one by one. This bit here. Boom! That's Burt Lancaster firing a shot off which an Indian's popped up. He ducks, but the bullet ricochets, goes boom off the rocks. At that bit of music. So they've run the wagon into the rocks, and quick as a flash, Burt Lancaster grabs Mrs. Reardon off the front as he shoves her underneath, gets the a Winchester at the back. This is the bit. Gets her under there, and he turns around and he shoots the horse, the one remaining horse, and horse goes, down it goes. And as a kid, you're watching these horses getting killed, and you're like, oh God, stop this. But the reason they're doing it is to stop Ulzana getting his hands on them and becoming a more mobile, marauding force. So they've got to do it, And I said before, cavalrymen shooting their horses means it's the end for them. A cavalryman shoots his horse. He's not a cavalryman anymore. He's now on the ground, and he can't fight back till the end. That's it. So he can't get away. But so in that moment, gets it under the wagon, shoots the horse, and it's a great heroic bit of fanfare. And then gets under. He's got 2 weapons there. Richard Jekyll's just over the way, and the guy's been shot. He ricochets, killed him. McIntosh, I'm coming in. And he runs across, and he gets shot in the side. He's like, oh shit! But he manages to get under the wagon. And this finale is majestic. It's brilliant. The music's turning now because there's 3 of them underneath this wagon now. The rest of the men are being picked off, like that's it. One guy's lying in the dirt, he's been badly wounded, he can't move. And he's like, somebody pick me off, God help me, somebody shoot me off. I'm like, Burt Lancaster realizes, I can't let him get caught by him. Shoots him, kills him. Horse bolts, takes the horse out as well. So they're all under there, and like he says, Mrs. Reardon, he's been hit, can you look after him? And like Richard Jacobs going like, it ain't nothing, don't bother her, it's fine. But he is wounded, good style. And Ulzana leads, you know, everybody just shoots at that wagon. So they're all going pow, pow, pow. They've all got like fucking Winchesters, they're better armed than the cavalry. And one bullet ricochets and goes through Burt Lancaster's neck. It's like that, like that, and you see the blood coursing down there. But one's gone into Richard Jekyll, the Sarge, and they just hear the Sarge go, what day is it? And McIntosh is like, it's Wednesday. And he goes, sure don't look like a Wednesday. And the music turns all wistful, and you're like, oh no, he's bought it as well. And he does one of those death scenes where he shuts his eyes and the head turns. But it's great. And then it comes back to Burt Lancaster's face, and he's lying there. And he's been shot in the back as well. One of the Indians has got a lucky shot, which has gone right into his spine. And he's like, oh! And, you see all the blood pour out of it. He's like, oh! And he just goes, Wednesday. As if that becomes something major. Ulzana realises they're fucked. So he goes, get in there. So two of his men come barreling across the fucking canyon floor, firing as they come. Now, let's get on to the bit. I can't find the bit. It's not that. It's this bit. Look, folks, you're here for the long haul. You're here for the ride. That's Richard Jekyll being shot there. And he's like, oh, did you see him in the background? Oh, like that. And you're like, oh no. This is him saying, what day is it? Frank DeVol's music it's of its time. It pays homage to all the typical Western scores with fanfares, harmonicas, accordions, the guitar riffs, the brass, the fanfares. But you've got snare drums and bugles and Indian ethnic percussion as well, and shakers and rattles and whistles. This is... Ulzana sends them in, and like Burt Lancaster's going like, Wednesday. And the two come running towards him now. Listen. And they're going, they're doing the war cries. And they're coming, barreling towards him. And he's like, he's not using an army Colt 1860. He's got a proper Colt peacemaker. And he's going, and they're getting closer. Only a couple of shots left. Drops one. Drops the other one. His body skitters to a halt right in front of him. And I always think, there's two Winchesters there. Come on, Bert, go and get him, And then you hear... This is Kinete coming across all the corralled horses and killing what I think is his alter ego in Ulzana'S war party, who's come in, and there's a guy holding the horses, but Kinete comes up in the rocks, goes bang bang, drops this guy, and then shoots and scares all the horses off. So Ulzana'S got nothing. The cavalry are coming in, he's lost all his men. Ulzana just shit. He runs out into the middle of the canyon and he hears the bugle. Fuck. So he just does the Apache shuffle. The Apache shuffle, folks, is a way of moving across long distances using very little energy, so your endurance and stamina builds up. I've done this in the Marines and other training exercises I did. We learned how to do this, carrying a load. But the Apache shuffle it's almost like you're speed walking, but it's a lot more comfortable and doesn't look anywhere near as stupid. So the Bruin comes in now, and Ulzana'S bolted. Kinete goes after him, and Kinete takes him out. Ulzana knows he's on his own. Kinete's behind him. He stops. He begins to sing his death chant to the spirits to welcome him in. And Kinete comes up and stands in front of him. Drops the weapon. Drops the rifle and extends the bugle that I think his son carried. Ulzana'S son carried after nicking it from a cavalryman, and shows him, yeah, your son's gone as well. I took your son. Or he took your son. Drops that, and Ulzana carries on with his death chant, and Kinete just walks up. You don't see it, but you see the gun come out, and he puts it to the head, and you hear the gunshot. Then he rides up at the end with Ulzana'S blood splattered body on the back of the horse. The Bruin and the men are all there now, and Mrs. Reardon's survived, everyone else is dead, but Burt Lancaster's mortally wounded, and they're trying to say to him, like, look, we'll get you on the wagon, we'll get you back. No. Or we'll send men back to you. Look, don't bother yourself, Lieutenant. I'm dying. Don't waste any more time. And I'll leave a burial detail here with you then. This whole thing about burials again, I'll leave a burial detail here with you. No, I'm not going to sit here and just chinwag with a bunch of grave diggers who are going to bury me. No, just give me a smoke, that's all I want. I got the makings, says one corporal or whatever, like gives him the stuff to make a ciggy. And and that's how it ends. Kinete comes back in with the body, and there's an exchange between Kinete and Macintosh, and then Kinete rides off, but he does look back at Macintosh. And the final scene, the final shot, which is a freeze frame, he's got his back heel in it and he's about to lick the paper, and it just ends. Ulzana'S raid, folks, is a wonderfully hard, unflinching bridge between the hearty, patriotic westerns, the revisionist westerns, and the grittier, far more, nasty version of what really took place, the more realistic interpretations. It bridges all that, and it is the first film that does it, and it does it with the most authenticity and faithfulness to the real life campaigns. You bring in a real life character of Archie Macintosh. Okay, he wasn't in the real life Ulzana War Party campaign, but he might as well have been, because that's the kind of thing he would have done. That's exactly the job that he did do, but he wasn't involved in this. Ulzana wasn't captured, but they're telling the Ulzana story, but depicting it with lots of Chateau and Nana and Vittorio. You're bringing all that in and telling a real life saga, which kind of was the bread and butter on the frontier at that time. You're bringing in the rituals and the beliefs. Kinete, as I say, you have this other guy on Ulzana'S side who, after the first killing, the capture of one of the outriders at the start of the movie, he wears the tunic and the cap of that cavalryman, and he's got the bugle and all that and everything. Like, Kinete, when we first see him, well, not when you first see him, but when you ride out with the cavalry patrol, he's in the tunic and the waistcoat, and he's got the cap on. Throughout the film, he will abscond with the cap and the jacket and just have the cavalry tunic on, but he'll have lots of Apache tribal stuff on it. He'll have the headband on. So he reverts back to being his proper form, albeit working for the army. Whereas the other guy on Ulzana'S side continues to wear the tunic and the cap. And it's a nice dichotomy, it's a nice sort of flip side. They both revert. Well, one's taken on the role of I'm wearing my enemy's gear. I'm looking more and more like them, because he likes it, clearly. And the guy that works for the government is bit by bit stripping off the accoutrements of the army and reverting back to what his look should be. And I just think it's beautiful. It's Kilt-Man, because Kilt-Man's related, by marriage to Ulzana. So it's only right that he kills him. And he kind of kills him in a respectful way. He doesn't go and butcher him, but he does put a bullet in the guy's brain and then haul his carcass back for burial, Because as De Bruin says, what do we do with the bodies? Well, De Bruin says, bury them all, bury everybody. And you're left with the one guy that won't be buried, is the guy that was trying to explain the ways of the Apache, and it's Burt Lancaster at the end, who a few years later in Zulu Dawn as Colonel Denford, the real life Colonel Denford, would fight against the Zulus at the Battle of Isandlwana, another last stand, and he will die as his real life counterpart did do. He will die in a heroic last stand. And it's just, Lancaster always said that this is one of his favourite roles, and he championed this movie. And you can see why he had his own cut of it, because it meant that much to him. Ulzana'S Raid, in whatever version you manage to get your hands on, is an exemplary depiction of frontier life and death and the struggle between the two races and creeds, and how they couldn't live together. So, there's probably lots of missed out there, to be honest. I mean, the whole thing with Rucksire, the one whose wife gets shot between the eyes, and he stays on to fight and look after his homestead, and he says to the outrider, look, this is good farmland here, it's good farm. One day, sorry, he came out like Arnie Schwarzenegger there, like, one day, I will be back. And I'll make these Apaches run to the hills. He stays behind. I said about that powerful moment between him and his wife when they say goodbye and take the son. Jeepar! Not really their son, is he? Going to do a file change again. Well, it's going to be an epic video, this, isn't it, folks? Those who've stuck along, I love you. Change. And we're back. But when they attack his place, oh dear God, this was the big shocker. This scene, the trooper blowing his brains out was a bad one when you first saw the movie, albeit cut, because you never saw him get hacked open, his heart getting ripped out and tossed around like a pasta parcel. You never saw that on TV. So that was a shocker when you first saw it in the uncut version. But Rucksire fights back against these. And Ulzana, they try and smoke him out, doesn't work, and he fights back, and I will not give up my land to no drunk man. Again, that whole thing about the Indians being drunks and just sold on whiskey. And what happens is, like, because they've got a bugle, they play, and he's like that. He realizes what. You take all the praise and all the glory. You take all the praise and all the glory. And he walks out, and that's it. And Aldrich cuts to the cavalry patrol, and it zooms in on the bugle on this guy just riding it. Clearly it wasn't him that blew that bugle. So you're like, oh no! It's a big oh! Which is of course when they find him, and he's been tied to the tree and burnt and tortured and mutilated. And the thing about the dog's tail in his mouth, what's that? And they can't pull it out, it's anchored into his teeth. Hang on, Apaches have got a sense of humour too, Lieutenant. What? To them it's just a joke. There ain't no reason for it, but they find funny. We might not, but it's a sense of humour. Like, oh God, and it is horrible. Like, in reality, Archie McIntosh did not die fighting Ulzana. He did not die fighting Indians, but he did lose his elite status in a bit of a nefarious act, which this film seems to make reference to at the start. In reality, what he did, he diverted food and resources to Apaches on a reservation to sell on his own, to sell and make profit from himself. So they never got food and supplies. He kept them and sold them, and he got caught doing it, lost his rank, lost his status. In this film, when they realised that at the start that Ulzana'S jumped the reservation, he is assigned to go out to the reservation with Kinete to go and assess. They've got no idea how many men that Ulzana'S taken with him. So I'm not going to command the force. I'm not going to commit a force to the field unless I know what the enemy disposition is, his strength. I can't do it. I need to know. There's some basis. Give me some. Is it 5, 6, 10, 20, 30? What is it? Go and find out. So they go out there to speak to the elders who stayed behind. And these guys don't like, as Kennedy says, they don't like you. And that asked. And he gets all cigars out. The guy who runs the reservation got a big stack of cigars, and he just opens up all the, the cigar cases. So let's, answer my questions, and you guys are gonna get these. And they give him the run around. Basically, they say certain things, but one thing that they do say to him is that, like, look, we want our full ration of food. The Dutchman, I'm not Dutch. I'm not Dutch. And Burt Lancaster says, like, you sound Dutch to me. He says, they want their full share of the food. Stop adding to the weight. I use proper scales. I weigh the beef. Yeah, but don't fill it with water first. A lot of steaks in a gallon of water. And it's like, no, stop conning these men, because they've said to him, look, we've helped you a bit, but Burt Lancaster's character, Macintosh, just says, like, look, you fucking give them what they earn, because they've got a choice to make now. They stayed behind when Ulzana ran. They could have gone with him, but they stayed behind. But how long they stay behind depends on you and how you feed them. So, right, shit, maybe I better do the right thing. That is the film. Kind of say, the real life Macintosh stole food, but we kind of want to use him as a hero in this film. So I know I'm saying it's dead faithful now, but the Macintosh in this film is not the Macintosh in reality. They've modelled this character on him, and they've made a reference to it, but switched it round a bit. And I don't mind that. I don't mind that at all. Folks, finally, I have expunged myself of Ulzana'S raid. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it made some kind of sense to you. I love the film. If you love westerns, you're going to love this film too. If you've seen it and you know it, then you understand already what I've been talking about. And I hope it's been a nice sort of trip down memory lane for you. And we're all singing from the same frontier Christian hymn book. Save the last bullet for yourself, and let God take care of you. It's grim, it's dark, it's foreboding, it's brooding. It has moments of levity, but it has some great character performances. Burt Lancaster is superb. George Luke as Kinete owns the film, owns it. It's his spiritual reawakening, but his fortitude and this desire to stay on the government side, because I've signed that paper, I'm doing this. He could easily have gone with Ulzana. He understands them. He could easily ride with Ulzana. Now imagine if Kinete had been with Ulzana, the cavalry would never have caught up with them. They'd have been outnumbered, they'd have been outgunned, outthought, outsmarted at every single turn. Richard Jekyll, grizzled, fantastic. Bruce Davison, awesome. He gets it. Writers always say that, this is his trial by fire. He doesn't encounter any gunfire. He only finds bodies. That's all he ever finds. And even then he can't decide, bury them, don't bury them, don't bury. Oh! But you can tell that would be for him, a huge turning point in his understanding and appreciation of the frontier world and how it really stands. And the last stand of Mackintosh and his dignified, look, just get me against some rocks, set me up, give me some shelter, give me a ciggy, and I didn't ask him for this because I don't smoke. Just give us some whiskey for fuck's sake, you know. But leave me here and don't let me sit talking to the guys who are going to bury me. Just fuck off and leave me. And I love it. And I love Kinetei's final, recognition. The unspoken words, the unspoken bond. That's a very genuine way. Everyone thinks it's a cliche, and when Native Americans are depicted in movies, their quiet poetry and eloquence of speech, and their, the long lingering looks, the stoic faces, they are like that. That is what they do. They've got a great sense of humour. Well, dogs, tails, and mouths. They've got a great sense of humour, and they've got their own jokes, their own vernacular, and they do speak with common colloquialisms as well. Of course, they've learned and absorbed everything from all the Europeans who've gone in there, and the way the world has become a huge stew of races and religions and spirituality and beliefs and cultures. But in those days, that is what they were like. It's not a cliche. When you get a white man red-faced up, that's a fucking cliche. But when you get Native Americans playing these roles, and you've got someone who understands the dialogue, and you've got people who are technical advisors to the... Alan Sharp was also a producer on this movie, the one who wrote the script for this. He's also the producer on the movie. And Burt Lancaster wanted things to be done as accurately as possible. They'd read the true story of the Ulzana raids. They read about Victoria, they read about Nana, they read about Chateau. They knew about all these things, and they tried to get this right. No one comes out of this smelling of roses. Nobody. You're all bastards, but you've all got to do what you've got to do to survive in this environment. And that could be as savage and as blood-curdling as you can imagine. But if that's what you do, that's what you do. And you've got to fight fire with fire. Violence begets violence. In this environment, if you've got to go out to capture people that are committing atrocities, then inevitably, as Vietnam and virtually every other conflict has proved, that the white man, the Westerner, the so-called civilized man commits just as much atrocities, and in fact introduces many more atrocities to sort of, more third world, more primitive environments and peoples. We bring in far more than they had in the first place. We make them worse. So, and that's what this film depicts as well. And the harmonica will play us out. Cheers, folks. I know it's hard with the transitions between video files. I also have the tech right here just to do one ongoing video. But hope you've enjoyed this. I've enjoyed it, although it's gone all over the show, But that's part of the fun, isn't it? Where's he going to next? Well, I'm out on the range. I haven't got a clue. I'm picking up trails. I'm following tracks, and I'm not as good as Kinetei. I just go in a big fucking circle. I go back to Mackintosh's Apache wife, Amy Eccles. In the brief shots you see of her, she's lovely. Kinetei might say that Ulzana'S wife, ugly. My wife, not so ugly. Well, I'd go along with the fact that Mackintosh's wife is possibly the prettiest and the least ugly of them all. Folks, I have been and always shall be Kilt-Man. At your service. So, keep it Kiltic, keep it Celtic. Happy trails, partner. Lock and load. Sit high in your saddle. Keep some extra beans and some water. But always, always save the last bullet for yourself. Now that would be a fatal mistake, wouldn't it? For a fatal mistake, you didn't kill yourself anyway. But imagine you've got the gun like that and you're trying to do it and your own hand has stopped the hammer from going back. to squeeze the trigger, that's when they're going to catch you. And you're going, oh no! Give me the gun again, let me do it. I'll do it for you. The gob iron. Can't beat it, can you? Pubs are open round by me on the inside now for the first time in 2021. COVID restrictions have lifted to allow us on the inside. Yeah, I'm going to a saloon near me very soon. Gonna see you all later. Get Ulzana'S raid as uncut as you can and get Frank de Vol's awesome score. You know it.